Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Curious Competitor Podcast. I am your host today. Connor Carrick is my name, as advertised. NHL defenseman by trade. But today we're going to do a podcast, a solo podcast. I've been promising my producer, Colin Steingart, and myself. I felt like this season sort of deserved a wrap-up. A lot of tumultuous year with everything that happened, given COVID-19 and laying low on the road and some of the solo time, and super grateful for my family in that regard. I really felt for a lot of the young players where playing in the National Hockey League at a young age is such a rush. There's so much fun to be had and sort of beginner's mind everywhere you show up on the road in terms of for a lot of young players, you've never been to Los Angeles on a business trip before, or had the excitement of flying into New York City before playing the Rangers, that kind of thing. And really, I mean, you think about it, they had to go to the rink every day, had the same meetings that they normally would, and go home, and it was really just their Xbox and whatever leftovers they had from the night before. I'm sure certain guys manage better than others, but a bit of empathy on my end for them. I wanted to today talk emotionally a little bit of what happened for me this season, performance-wise, psychologically. Spent some time, in the minor leagues. There was a great waiting game there and I know it happened a lot around the league with taxi squad players where, they may or may not have gotten, even above a game or two or five. And that was definitely a trajectory I was on there for a bit. Was fortunate enough with the Devils management to find a way to, find some ice time in the American League, which presented its own challenge. So I guess we'll start there today. To go from you're not having played for a long time off the back of the end of last season, it was this perpetual not knowingness sort of style, this disorganization in training that I hadn't experienced before, just because normally you kind of know, you project out, if the season started in October, training wise, these are the phases I want to progress through. On ice wise, this is usually for me, the order kind of goes skating work first. I want to get what's going on at the level of where the steel hits the ice. I want to get that as clean as possible, and then do some more skill work, increase some of the conditioning, and then increase the game situation, and then off you go towards your season. And this off season kind of had, I don't know, it was weird. Like I was, sneaking off to go ski with, a good friend of mine in Chicago and Matt Ford and playing in, games once a week. And there were weeks where, for whatever reason, the NHL talks seemed to be heating up and I'd be preparing, kind of cramming for the test really was the sensation. So to fast forward and go all the way to, my time with the Binghamton Devils this year, I hadn't played to going to play in the American League, which has a particularly physical style of play. There's a lot of what I consider broken plays, pucks that hit skates. There's a ton of stops and starts in comparison to the National Hockey League, which is more of get a hunch your position and get in a good spot. And then it's sort of a waiting game, a cat and mouse game between, whoever's carrying the puck, say I'm defending, and let's say it's their left winger oftentimes as the right defenseman is sort of my responsibility. I've got to, kind of keep him and his speed in mind. And then, ideally, if I'm in a good spot, I'm able to look, beyond him and kind of read the rush versus the American League is just a little bit more of a sporadic game. It's very physical, a lot of pucks on the wall. You got to fish out. So to go from not playing at all to, and admittedly, we didn't have a great team in Binghamton, to having to defend a lot and play, defense a lot, it was extremely difficult physically. The style of play, I was able to have a higher level of success just because I played at that level for quite some time when I was younger, and just experience wise, I kind of knew where I stacked up every night, in terms of being one of the higher end guys, and was able to. It really became an asset for me towards the end of the season where I did get my NHL opportunity that I had faith was coming, but there was no question that. I guess I can't lie. There was certainly some doubt as to how that was going to progress, and whether it was going to be for the Devils or elsewhere. I know NHL wise there wasn't a lot of movement this year, and being a guy with the salary that I had, with the lack of play that I'd had, I knew it was going to be tough when I was in the American League. Now, couple that with, mentally that was a lot. I relished the opportunity to be a leader. I think that's something as an older brother of 3 boys, I really always enjoyed talking the game and sharing the game with younger players, and that was something I had an opportunity to do there. Kevin Ball and I thought, played really, really well there, and again, a little bit in the NHL. We weren't partners for long. I played mostly with Will Butcher at the end of the season. Graham Clark was another, fun guy to work with. We'd worked with similar off-ice consultants and kind of bonded over our experience with that, and really enjoyed that challenge for what it was. I guess the way I'm putting it is that I knew it was a challenge at the time. Even at home, for me, with the baby, I was able, with Charlie, man, I was getting up a lot, in the middle of the night to help feed him and help Lexi with, cleaning bottles and that kind of thing. And, she was a warrior and a champ all season, and her support and what I was going through being demanding, but I also knew as a new mom, Lexi was tired. There's these babies literally, suck the life out of their mom in terms of it's what gives them life. But, if energy is neither created nor destroyed, it's kind of a one-way exchange most of the time. You're facilitating the growth of this baby, and it takes a lot out of the moms. And so I had, so much respect for what Lexi was going through, but at the same time, from a sports science standpoint, I guess it was a case study and, what it's like to go from playing 0 minutes to playing, some nights it looked like, I'd get my shifts and things like that from the Devils use, like that Sport Logic app. I'd get the emails and it'd be like, 31 minutes of ice time on top of, I was getting up every, couple hours with Charlie. And people would ask me, throughout the season, I get Instagram direct messages and stuff. What was it like, being a parent? What's it like, getting up with Charlie and that kind of thing? Because it was kind of well known that I was doing that. And I would joke, it's like having an early flight where you kind of get that uneasy stomach and you're part of you kind of wants to just get up for the day, but you're not sure because the other part of you is, frankly, quite tired. And it was like having 3 to 5 of those a night. And so that was a unique experience. Another thing I wanted to talk about today that I was particularly proud of from a family sense was I feel we settled in despite the adversity of the year. I had, multiple sort of COVID quarantines in my own house, the call up, the send down. Lexi and I did a really good job communicating about what each other's needs were. For example, at the end of the season, I just said, hey, summer's coming soon. I'll be up all hours of the clock on call, whatever you need, whatever Charlie needs. But for now, this is a precious opportunity that I'd waited all season for, and frankly, all off season. I need to throw everything at the wall that I can, and show my best. I was waiting in the weeds for this, and I desperately wanted it. Now I've got it, and I want to make sure that on my end, preparation wise and execution wise, I'm able to be the best version of myself out there. I mean, and of course, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans, right? I'm not sure who said it, but it sounds true. It feels true. Even my first game against the Rangers this year, Lindy Ruff came up to me that morning, the day before. I think I was the 8th defenseman on the depth chart. And so you go home that night, you have dinner, you kind of think to yourself, there's the lineup will be posted tomorrow, but I kind of have an idea of how this is going to go. Well, I show up the next day, and I just felt like I was a punching bag all night. For whatever reason, we had a tough night with Charlie, and I just felt zonked, almost if I was hungover or something, like just bad brain fog. Zip was not there at all. I got up, I did some of my red light therapy with the Wave is the company that I use, and I found that to be extremely helpful amongst all the other things that I normally use from a sort of a biohacking or physical wellness standpoint. And I figured to myself, all right, I just got to go to pregame skate. There'll probably be a little bag skate at the end. Just suck it up for an hour, and you can take a nap this afternoon and eventually, go watch the game. And then Lindy comes in and catches me during breakfast and, says, hey, Connor, I forget what the circumstance was, who was out, who was sick, who got tested for, tested positive or whatever, and goes, I actually really appreciated his delivery. Despite having, a relationship where I hadn't played much for him to date. So I was obviously unhappy about that. I respected the circumstance, but every pro hockey player, myself included, wants to play. And he goes, "Hey, Connor," call me Karis. "Karis, you're in tonight. We're really excited for you. Do well. You've handled everything, tremendously well as a professional. We've seen your hard work every day," which I did. I admit I was really proud of my preparation, and Travis Zajac was a huge part of that. We both were, Adam Oates clients at the time, and kind of bonded over that. Dmitry Kulikov was another guy that helped me stay sharp. I talked to Johnny Hayden from another organization. Kevin Rooney and I would talk all the time just about how to stay sharp. And so anyway, to wrap it up, Lindy goes, "Charlie's going to get to see you play tonight." Because I think Charlie was maybe 2 or 3 weeks old, if that, at the time. And that to me was extremely special. Now, it was a road game, and I knew that, Charlie was going to physically be in the building, but just the fact that he was going to be at home, able to catch it, was super emotional for me, I think, as a dad. And this was something that was on my mind a lot this season, is because people would ask me, and even family members would ask me, "What's it like being a dad? What's different?" And the answer is, not that much, I suppose. Our daily life is mostly the same. We don't go out to dinner and things like that the way we used to. We don't, we say no to a lot more social events and things like that. And that's fine. That's neither here nor there. It's not really a huge driver for me. Lexi's a little bit more social than I am. It was something that was on my mind a lot as a dad was, I wouldn't want Charlie to do things right most of the time, right? Because as a father, my advice would be, "Son, I love you to pieces. But in terms of being your best every day, it's an everyday thing. And that's our expectation as a family. And that's what I think your responsibility is as a person to, honor your gifts and honor the opportunities that you have, the sacrifice that other people make on your behalf, just your general responsibility to bring something to the community every day, whether that's a team, your workplace, your school setting. Doing your best isn't necessarily something negotiable. Now, maybe certain days your best isn't as close to your ceiling as other days. That's human nature, human physiology. You're going to have good days and bad days. I understand that. But your approach in terms of trying to be your very best it's who we're going to be as a family. It's I guess it kind of comes with the last name, in my opinion. And I know Charlie's not going to catch any slack from his mom either. We're people of, we hold our values close to the heart. And so this was, kind of something that I was able to call upon during tough times this season. Whether it was, in the second period, we're on the road playing Wilkes-Barre. It feels a hell of a long way away from where I felt I should be playing the National Hockey League. And you do your best. And maybe you wore a block shot and that kind of thing. You're hurt, the day after you're hurt. And the answer was, again, to come back and do your best. And there was something about becoming a dad that just became so much more available. Of course, this was a standard that I'd like to say I've always upheld and valued as important to me. But there's something about the reminder that I'm setting an example that my son will see or know, either through word of mouth or everything's on video nowadays or Hockey DB, whatever. If Charlie wants to know, who his dad is and was, there's just so much information available, and I wanted that to be something I could be proud of. As an example, not from an ego perspective, or that I wanted my son to think that I'm Marilyn Mew, because I'm not. But there are just certain, I guess, human principles that eventually, Charlie and I are going to have a conversation over. For now, it's mostly bobbing our head to, Bruno Mars songs on the carpet while we do tummy time. But, someday we're going to have these conversations father to son. And I wanted to have a leg to stand on. So that kind of, in my mind, transitions me to, and I guess let me highlight that Rangers game real quick before I go on to the skip, sort of the American League stint, because I think I talked about that to the end of the season, which is a little bit fresher on my mind to speak of. to have not played as long as I did, and Lindy told me I played well. Elaine Nazardine, told me I played well after, and I knew it, but it's at the end of the day, you have bosses, and you want to make your bosses happy. In the sport of hockey, you want to create trust with them because eventually they're the gatekeepers. They're the ones that are going to give you a jersey on game day and call your name to go over the boards. I had played really well, and I mentioned Zajac, Kulikov, and there were other guys where we really did everything we could despite the condensed schedule to protect our talent and take responsibility for our own development. I think it's very easy in an NHL season with the limited practice time, with a coach having to manage all players on the roster day in, day out. It's easy to just kind of check out and get off the ice when the group gets done, but there's a lot of plays just in a team structure that you kind of can't continue to practice, continue to work on it, and especially if you're out of the lineup, you're gonna suffer the consequences when you get back in if you're unable to sort of manufacture that game day intensity at least a couple times, say for example, each and every week. On top of and in face of the bag skating, things like that, which I've always personally, I've been in the depths of NHL lineups. I've seen what it's done to other players' games. I've always not necessarily been a fan, not from a physical standpoint. I have no issue. I have a good relationship with doing hard things physically. It doesn't really scare me. It doesn't mean it feels good in your legs when you got the poison going and your lungs are breathing heavy. I just don't like doing things that, frankly, make me feel slower as a skater and don't help translate to the NHL skill set. Right? Like I've never seen an NHL game where guys have just, gone up and down the ice, Herb Brooks 60-second style, or, done multiple laps. I understand that, sort of the cardio training has its place. I just never understood for guys, what you're missing as a depth player when you're not playing is, game reps where you've got to pass through sticks, where you've got to make reads, where you've got to catch ugly pucks, because NHL practice is so polished and perfect and everything's on the tape. That's not a real reflection of a game. And I think that, at least in my own career, I've always tried to go find that and create it on my own. And so I was extremely proud of that Rangers game and fully ready for that to be my only NHL game of the season, the way things were going, because I'm not sure people outside of pro hockey would recognize how hard it is to play a game against players that are already on the full-blown NHL circuit. They're playing every other night. Their game's sharp. Their game's fresh. Their game's tested. And I hadn't played a game since training camp, maybe 6-8 weeks prior, which was, sort of fake inter-squad hockey. It's never the same as playing another club. And I had played really well. I had seen other guys, whether it was guys that come off injury this year for the Devils even, or, across the league that, other guys that I'd watch, frankly, not fare as well. And that was, to me, a testament to all the mental work that I've done, all of the lessons, frankly, I've even learned here, on the podcast. Kind of was channeling a little bit of Randy Hetrick where he's talking about, going through buds as a Navy SEAL, just focus on the next 10 feet in front of you. Instead of trying to play an entire good game, I just, really was able to think one shift at a time. And that's not something that always came as naturally to someone like myself. So I guess wanted to get on the air and officially pat myself on the back. And then go through the American League stint, play very well, felt very comfortable at that level, was going to get all the opportunity being an NHL guy, and I did. So much about, having success in pro hockey is the opportunity. If you ask any athlete that's played at this level, they know that. They'll admit that. And that's why there is so much respect for the guys that kind of are able to get through the meatloaf and create a little stable base to build their career off of. Minus the really upper echelon guys at the next tier of player, it's extremely tight. It's extremely tight, and team preference and coaching preference, always will play a role, as it should. That's what they're hired to do, is provide their hockey opinion. And so anyway, I was a little bit on the outside looking at the NHL level, but the American League, put me in a very favorable situation. So I was able to really get my conditioning up, really get my reads up, get used to the physicality of getting hit. But with that said, the NHL game is extremely different. It's so much more poised. It's so much more sneaky. the puck play is just so much better. In the AHL, you kind of just get the puck back. You can turn a puck over. A lot of times I'll end up, in the stands with a missed, net shot opportunity, or they'll turn it over back to you. Versus in the NHL, like, you've got to go and get the puck from somebody. The puck just doesn't find its way back to you nearly as easily. So to come back and play against, Pittsburgh, we started those 3 games on the road, was particularly tough. That was, and we've seen in the NHL playoffs now, like, that was a team ready to rock, primed to play some serious hockey, with a veteran status or a veteran leadership that was not going to let their game slip towards the end of the season. Like, sometimes you'll see teams that have secured a playoff position. It was really impressive. And what an opportunity. It really was something that, earlier in my career, I remember I'd played for, Mike Babcock with the Leafs, for example, was particularly, he was particularly picky about his matchups, right? So he didn't care where you were on the ice. If he had a matchup at a particular time and Crosby kind of came over the boards, your shift essentially ended and you were doing anything you could to, get off the ice, per the coach's orders, which puts not only the player on the ice in a tough spot, but also the guy, coming on to take the matchup. So, this time around, we kind of had a little bit more of a green light from the staff to, sure, we had our matchups that we wanted, but being on the road, at some point you're going to have to play against their best players. And you've got to be able to do well. And I was really proud of, the way that I was able to play initially in those Pittsburgh games, and then definitely towards the end, really happy with, sort of the way I was able to play better even with like the odd little series, just the way the years went against Philly. I had a block that, I would say that was one of the highlights in my entire hockey career. We're playing Philly. We're in the second period on the road, and I wish it was at home in front of, thousands and thousands of Devils fans. That would have been unbelievable. But so there's this huge scramble. They've got us entirely pinned. There's like 15 guys in the crease. Mackenzie Blackwood, is trying to find a puck. Miles Wood's behind me, and for whatever reason, Provorov for Philly, whose game I really like, makes this, behind the back D to D. Just to give you an idea of the play. Behind the back D to D pass at the offensive hash mark to Justin Braun, and I kind of lock eyes with him. Wanted to close the ground so the puck didn't have as much time to accelerate into me, and just launch myself in some capacity that was hopefully going to protect my face, and I get this great block, and it might have saved a goal, may not have, but it was more so. That's what you miss when you're outside the lineup. For sure, you miss being able to compete. For sure, you want to play, but it's the camaraderie that, and even the criticism that comes from teammates over the course of doing things together, towards a common goal. So we were obviously out of a playoff spot at that time, but at the same token, we were able to string together a stretch where we'd won, 5 out of 6 games. Every player in the Devils lineup at that point, still had something to prove. A lot of us playing were either fringe guys most of the year, or younger players looking for more ice time the next season, or, some of the guys, say for example, like, Ty Smith, who had a strong year until he got hurt, and, Jack Hughes, who was, much better in his second year than his first. They still wanted to, or Sharon Govich, who'd had, quite a few goals this year. Like, those guys still wanted to put an exclamation mark on their good season. So everyone was motivated. But this block in particular, I remember screwing around with Ryan Murray, who I got along with great this season. And, Nate Bastian, who's one of my stallmates and one of my, favorite guys I've played with. Just them pumping my tires on the bus about how wild this block was and how crazy it was. And I ended up getting another block right after. It's the show. I'm telling the story not to toot my own horn, which yes, I'm doing, but it's more so to celebrate the fun of the game that you miss when you're out of the lineup. The mutual respect of, hey, I'm trying to make plays. I'm trying to make the game easier for my teammate, and my teammates, working his nuts off to do the same for me. And it's that mutual working towards a common goal that's so special. I mean, I don't know if I'd rank another team sport beyond hockey, just how fluid it is, how many different aspects of the game you've got to be good at. So in terms of when I came back to that bench, and it was right at the end of the period, so we were kind of able to celebrate about it all, intermission long, and we eventually won that game. That was one of the highlights of my year for sure. But just in terms of like something I'll remember when I'm done playing, was one of the more fun times and plays that I've really had. And was there a bit of nerves when I was coming out on this puck, like point blank, that I was going to wear this in a spot that, I don't know, wasn't going to feel so hot the next day, or worse, even injure me for a bit? Yeah, I don't think you're unconscious of that fact, that's a risk. But at the same time, the aggressiveness I was able to have in coming out and pursuing the angle that I wanted, I think actually protected me against, sometimes when you try to get out of the way, or you get nervous, when a shot's coming your way, you end up getting clipped in a bad spot. Another thing that I really took a lot of pride in towards the end of the season was I felt that Will Butcher and I, play a similar game. I think we're a little bit different in sort of our makeup and physicality and the way that we defend. But puck-wise, I think we break out similarly, and we like to use each other a lot. And it helped us, we both, I think, play a very efficient, breakout game. And so Lindy Ruff, and I know he's pretty private with the media and stuff. So I try to respect the, player-coach sort of relationship. But as a positive thing that he said to me, down the stretch was, Connor, you're playing great, and you got to be, real proud of your execution. And the quote that he said that I was most proud of was, he's like, we look like a real hockey team with you out there. Like the pace of the game, the structure of our team is good. The puck arrives when guys, are ready for it and want it. It's clean when you make your play, and that sort of efficiency and sharpness is something that I've always taken great pride in as a player, and have worked on purposefully. Like I've never had, the McDavid top speed, or I'm never going to be this, tree of a defenseman in terms of size and things like that. So, the little detail plays, the rhythm of the game, the gap, the ability to deny entry, the ability to pluck the puck off the wall and get it to good, low forwards in the middle so that, their D can't pinch down on the wall. That's my bread and butter. And it was really cool to be recognized by, coach who, let's call it what it is, for most of the year, didn't use me in a way that communicated he believed I could help the team, win at that time. And so that was something that, I was extremely proud of, in the Philly series particularly. It was a rush team. It was another team with little to play for at the end of the season in terms of standings. So those are sometimes sneaky games to play in. And then, again, versus the Islanders, where I eventually played my final games, I just felt really proud of sort of the stepping stone going into next season, whatever that looks like. And I guess that's what I'm trying to communicate today, is in the present moment, we are always doing things that at a later date we'll have an opportunity to reflect on. And I wanted to, at the end of the season, very consciously make sure that the Connor of today, the Connor of May 22nd, would have something to build off of, to be proud of, all summer long. It's going to be a long summer, a long off season, and you want to throw your stake in the ground and be able to show the league always. You're trying out always. Someone's always watching. My dad's taught me that from a young age, and it's absolutely true. I wanted to make sure that I was making the game easier for the other four guys on the ice. And frankly, when they had the puck, same thing. I wanted to make sure I was an out. I wanted to make sure I was in the right spot defensively and communicating so that they knew what was going on. And I think it showed. I think we were able to play, some good hockey as a group and with me on the ice. And so maybe this is my unsolicited ad, going into free agency, which I've never done before. I've always been, a restricted free agent and qualified by the club I was with. So this is, there's no real handbook on emotionally how to handle it. But similar to last offseason, I'm going to do, what I did, which is I'm going to try to pursue marginal gains. And maybe I'm transitioning here to, some of the summer plans. So I'm going to work with Ian Mack out of Chicago with Tomahawk Science. We've had a spectacular relationship the last couple of years. Last year was a little bit different, just with everything that was going on and the way the gym scene was in Chicago. I felt for him, and really all the trainers in that industry having to navigate that. Lexi was pregnant at the time, so it was certainly an uncertain time. I was going to the gym, training with a mask on, sweating through it, trying to change to a second one, a third one. It just wasn't fun, frankly. So this offseason, I'm really looking forward to, kind of getting after things the way I normally would, with all of the open-mindedness that the reflection of last offseason offered. So with Ian and I, we're going to have a conversation around what our goals are with the baby and the ice time this year. I admit that, for the first time in my career, I'd had some back pain, and I'd always been really religious in my ability to kind of recover post practice and game and things like that. But because of the, Charlie at home, I was much more cognizant in getting home quicker and that kind of thing, just so I could be around the house. And I did feel, some hip tightness that I hadn't had earlier in my career, because I've never missed a game to like a soft tissue, non-contact injury that way. And I didn't this year as well. But it was kind of a cool lesson that, like, hey, Connor, all the work that you do day in, day out does add up and does work. And on the other side of it, if you want to leave it for an extended period of time, there is going to be some stiffness that kind of sets in. I think a lot of that had to do with the jump, right, from going, playing no minutes to playing, 32 and 29 on a consistent basis, back-to-back games on the road. We would, for example, bust to Hershey, bust back, bust to Wilkes-Barre the next day, whereas previous years that might have been, stay over in a hotel, that kind of thing. And then on the hockey side, trying to talk to a group of friends about trying to talk to Brian Keane, who I use a lot in Chicago with Prodigy Hockey, just about, some of the video work that we did this season, some patterns. We didn't do necessarily individual video work this season, but we have in the past. But we'll go over, some individual plays and things like that, mindset things that we can work on, earlier in the summer, later in the summer, kind of come up with a progression plan and things like that. And I'm a big believer that discipline and scheduling kind of allows for freedom, right? And so this is something I've talked a lot with Peter Russo about, who's a hockey mind that I've really come to know and love, personal friend that I've come to know and love by ways of John Hayden had introduced us. We talk about it a lot where, sort of play and self-discovery with the game gets lost in, the drills and sets and reps sort of scheme that's so dominant in pro hockey. Everything's got to have a point. Everything's got to have a direct point. All we've got to do is work on this particular play, which I get. Really, what I found in the end of the season, this is something I channeled extremely well, is there are certain sort of guiding principles and feelings in your body that allow your brain and your game to do what they do. They allow you to do the calculus and make the decisions, because you can't work on every play all the time. Every play is particularly unique. It's against a different player with a different reach, and the speed off the puck's different, and this guy's changing. You're at this point in your shift, so no play is exactly the same. There's definitely high event situations, and Daryl Belfry's work is very famous at that, identifying sort of KPIs, like key performance indicators, or what are the areas of the ice that offer the best ROI, return on investment if improved. This is something Russo and I would talk about, but also there's sort of a mind state, a state of flow that comes from certain little cues. And so, he and I are gonna sit together, and he's out of Boston, so either I'll go there, and I want to see the Super Coffee team. I know they have a base, sort of a headquarters out of Boston, so I can, go after a couple birds with one stone that way. Or I want to do, sort of a super camp of fellow, I'll trademark it, curious competitors, say in Chicago, or even another location, like similar to how I think Crosby was famous for it, having the group in Vail, with McKinnon and those guys, with, Andy O'Brien and their group. Daryl's done his thing in Florida, which I was lucky enough to be invited to a couple off seasons ago. I was training with Patrick Kane in Chicago, and he'd kind of asked me, if I knew about this and wanted to go, and that was an awesome event. So either, I'm looking into something like that to prep for the season right before, or decided to kind of do my own thing if I can ask around, some other high-end players and practitioners and actually get our own group. Maybe bring, when I think of talent to bring to the event, for example, I think Peter Russo would do a great job. Would love to set up, some small ice games. Would love to either, I don't know if I've had him on the podcast yet, but Avi Greenberg, does breath coach work and sort of the XBT Laird Hamilton model. He's familiar. Lisa Haggerty, who I've had on the podcast where we've banked the episode, but I haven't released it yet for reasons that she's asked me to. I think she would do great emotional intelligence work, emotional agility. I think that there are, as players, you've got to execute on what's standard for the game, right? 10 years ago, that was, or maybe even 15, that was kind of like the strength and conditioning side, right? Everyone all of a sudden was hiring their trainer and coming in, bigger, faster, stronger than they ever had. And then, when scoring went way down, players sort of, the Darryl Belfries of the world, the Brian Keanes, the Adam Oates, the, Peter Russos, the Adam Nicholsons, players started to get more creative in their own personal consulting and how can I score more and why are pucks not going in for me and doing that kind of thing. I think there's a new wave coming. There always is. I think even, with the way that younger players, for example, handle and shoot the puck, I think that's something like you can see, Trevor Zegras does things, at the World Junior level that Miles Koulis and I, who I play with at the U.S. development team, we're joking, texting. We're like, what are these guys doing? I remember we played for Danton Cole. I was at Michigan State. Now, we used to have a strict no backhand passes rule. You're not allowed to handle the puck or let the puck touch your backhand in practice. And now I'm watching, Trevor Zegras go, backhand toe drag, like ski ramp off the skinny part of his blade. I think I'm finally that older player that's looking around and going, wow, the game's changed. And I love it. It's absolutely for the better. Just as a professional who, this is how I on one hand feed my family, but it's also a great source of competitive fun for me. It's a new puzzle and it's always changing. So this is a very reflective time about trying to schedule forward. Where do I want to be and when? Culturally, how can I set up more and more time with people that I think will facilitate, for sure, purposeful growth, right? The target seeks the arrow, as Matthew McConaughey and Greenlights might say. But at the same time, there's always a bit of learning that goes on in circumstances where you wouldn't normally expect. There are conversations that just spark up because you're at lunch together, because you're lacing them up in a locker room together. And I'm so off the back of a disciplined plan and a schedule can come some of these freer times, these more experimental times, that sort of thing. And then, of course, I can't tip all my cards. It's a competitive game. There are a couple secret projects that I'm looking to take on just in terms of competitively. I think I have some ideas that might be a little new wave. And, of course, the game is what it is. It's still 5 guys on each side, and the puck weighs the same. So you don't want to reinvent the wheel every summer. And I think, for example, a player I was around in Andy Green, he's not a stick tinkerer. He's not, someone who's looking for the latest and greatest diet or trying to reinvent himself at, however old he is. Now he's been in the league forever. He's a player that you could kind of tell in his approach, because I was around him a little bit in New Jersey when I'd moved here early prior to the season last year. He was trying to be exactly who he was. And I think that personal consistency, right? Everything's sort of a reflection from the inside out. You got the sense that his approach and his preparation was so consistent, and that allows for his game, right? You've seen, I've been this guy where preseason, you can see the busyness. You can see that a player trying to change their profile, change their skate blade, change their curve, whatever, in pursuit of 1% better, but sometimes that's not being true to the player that you really are. So it's this blend, right? You're always trying to rewire the nervous system for every play you can improve to be the very best that you are, but at the same time, you can't chase becoming something you're entirely not. So I'm not sure if that necessarily offers any fantastic answers. But I think what's more important at this point in the offseason is actually just to ask better questions. What are my goals? Who can help me pursue those goals? Who else has achieved these goals prior to that I would really like to talk to? For example, I think it was a Matt Nickel on Twitter, who I have a lot of respect for and have talked to a lot of his clients, love him to death. I think he retweeted it. It was a Marty St. Louis tweet. It was kind of the original gritty skill guy that was, brutally undersized, but went on to have a tremendously successful career in a Hall of Fame career. And he had a quote. He was like, I wasn't sure if I was, particularly exceptional in anything other than, getting better at things. And I think that that's something that I hold close to my heart, and I'm looking to, really put on display this season, because and we're on the air, so this is as permanent as it is, as long as it's replayable and on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you listen to this podcast. I truly believe I've played to 30 to 40% of my NHL potential to date, which is awesome, because I've gotten a jersey still, I've gotten multiple contracts, but offensively, I think that I even though we didn't get many looks just because we weren't a high-end puck possession team at the end of the year, I was able to do some things that I felt had been in my game for a long time. Now that I know I'm capable of the opportunity, the challenge is to do it more often. And then defensively, there was just a calmness and a steadiness, that I thought I could really build off of. So with all that said, my alarm's starting to go off for Charlie Man to feed. This podcast was equal parts for you and for me to kind of verbally digest the season and spill out some of my goals for the year with no guest to keep me honest. I apologize for the I'm working on it. Okay. This podcasting thing, it's not as easy as you'd think. I almost did it again. So with all that said, I look forward to sharing, sort of how the summer's going and checking in. I'm going to have a couple podcasts with either hockey coaches that I'm working with to talk about some of our work together and how we're going about it, so we can show our cards a little that way. I look forward to having Ian Mack on. I haven't had him on yet because I wanted to do it in person, and just with the way things were going last year and the pandemic and all that, we weren't able to do it. I'm going to have Roland Pankawich back on, who's handling my nutrition. And we're going to go over, I'm doing some labs and things like that, just to get a picture of what's under the hood with the body prior to the season, and talk a little bit about, how we're going about rebuilding the engine for next year. I don't know, a lot of fun. And any suggestions, continue to direct message me either at the Curious Competitor account on Instagram. Colin and I check that quite a bit, or my personal account at Connor Carrick. So thank you, everyone, for joining me this week on our journey to become a more curious competitor.